My people, what do you get when a sanctioned superpower starts quietly unloading tanks, fighter jets, and radar jamming tech, not in Europe or the Middle East, but right here on African soil? You get a new Cold War. And this time, Africa isn't just caught in the middle. Africa is the battlefield. Over the past few weeks, Russian cargo ships have been docking quietly in West Africa. Not with grain, not with medicine, not with aid, but with howitzers, armored vehicles, electronic warfare systems, and yes, even fighter bombers. These are not the kind of deliveries you make by accident. These are the kind of deliveries you make when you're sending a message. This isn't Wagner freelancing on the Kremlin's behalf anymore. This is official, state-sanctioned, strategic. Russia is replacing its shadowy mercenary network with a new force, the Africa Corps, and using it to build hard military power across countries like Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. In today's episode of The Breakdown, we're unpacking a major Associated Press investigation that exposes how Russia is ramping up its military presence in Africa and what that means for the continent's future. We'll ask, why is Russia sending advanced weapons into the Sahel? What's really at stake for African nations accepting these deals? And is this the beginning of a new power alignment that sidelines the West? Because this isn't just about guns. It's about leverage. It's about resources. And it's about who gets to shape Africa's future, or who gets to be a part of it, and who gets left out. We're going to break it down, but first, a big welcome to all of our new subscribers and members. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, please consider this your personal invitation and help us get to 200,000 subscribers. Because here at Panda Genius TV, we're not just building a channel. We're creating a global home for Black stories that are told with truth, with intention, and with care. And if that speaks to you, and I hope it does, then hit subscribe and tap the bell for alerts. Also consider joining our membership community or dropping a super thanks to support our channel and help us remain independent and unapologetic. Also, follow me on all my socials at Sandra Babu-Boateng and subscribe to my personal YouTube channel, Sandra Babu-Boateng, to hear more from me, including exclusive interviews and coverage from events that I'm attending around the world. All right, now, let's get into it. So let's start with what we know. On June 5th, the Associated Press published an explosive investigation, and I don't use that word lightly. It confirms that Russian-flagged cargo ships have been quietly delivering military equipment to West Africa, primarily to Mali and Guinea. Now, these aren't small arms or leftovers from old stockpiles. We're talking about modern howitzers, BTR-80 armored personnel carriers equipped with radar jamming technology, and even Su-24 fighter bombers, the kind Russia uses in Ukraine. The shipments came in via vessels like the Baltic Leader and Patria, both linked to Russia's defense supply chain. They docked in Conakry, Guinea, and then the cargo was transported by land into Mali under heavy military escort. Now, that alone suggests that this wasn't just a delivery. It was a message. Satellite imagery from open source investigators backs it up, showing convoys of trucks and eventually a fighter jet parked on the tarmac in Bamako, Mali's capital. So where are these weapons going? They're being handed off to a new entity you need to know about, Russia's Africa Corps. This is the state-sanctioned successor to the Wagner Group. After Wagner's leader died in a suspicious plane crash and the group's operations were folded into Russia's Ministry of Defense, the Africa Corps was born and is already active. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, all now led by military leaders, have either invited or accepted Russian support through this new force. Now, the Russian government says this is all perfectly legal. They call it military technical cooperation. But here's the problem. Many of the weapons being shipped and the ships being used are under international sanctions. Russia is using Africa to bypass restrictions and reinforce its global military footprint. And most of it is happening with little resistance or even attention from the international community. So in plain terms, Russia is sending heavy weapons into a volatile region through back channels to prop up allied regimes and expand its influence, and is doing so in broad daylight. But the bigger question here is why? Why is Russia investing so heavily, militarily, in Africa right now? The answer has everything to do with opportunity, leverage, and long-term strategic positioning. First, let's talk timing. As Western powers, especially France and the United States, pull back from the Sahel, they're leaving behind a vacuum. Years of military missions, counterterrorism training, and development aid have either stalled or been rejected outright by new military governments. Now, these governments, frustrated with what they see as broken promises and foreign interference, are looking for new partners who don't ask questions about democracy or human rights. Enter Russia. With its back against the wall in Ukraine and under sweeping international sanctions, Moscow is seizing this moment to forge new alliances and build influence in places where the West is losing ground. And the trade-off here is simple, right? Weapons and security assistance in exchange for access to natural resources, political loyalty, and military footholds. In Mali, for example, Russia's presence coincides with new mining deals and expanded access to gold reserves. In Guinea, it's about bauxite and geopolitical positioning along the Atlantic. And across the region, it's about challenging the post-colonial dominance of France while pushing back against Western diplomatic isolation. But this isn't just opportunism. It's part of a broader strategy. By embedding itself in Africa's security architecture, Russia is positioning itself as a power broker, one that can disrupt Western alliances, gain access to critical raw materials, and influence the future of African governance without ever firing a shot. And in a multipolar world, that matters because Africa's 54 nations control massive reserves of oil, gas, uranium, gold, rare earth minerals, not to mention votes at the United Nations. Russia understands that if you want global influence, you don't just look east or west, you look south. And Africa is where the game is shifting. So what does all of this mean? Not just for Russia, but for Africa and for the West. Well, let's start with the West, right? For decades, Western nations have viewed Africa through a narrow lens, as a source of raw materials, a battleground for counterterrorism, or a target for aid. But now Russia is forcing a recalibration. By stepping in with arms and military advisors, no lectures about democracy, no preconditions, Russia is offering a transactional, fast-track alternative to Western engagement. And that's resonating with leaders who feel abandoned, disrespected, or constrained by Western institutions. France has already been kicked out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. The U.S. is facing pressure to withdraw troops, and President Trump is reportedly planning to shut down AFRICOM, its Africa Military Command altogether. And Europe's influence, both economic and cultural, is being replaced by something more pragmatic: security guarantees with no strings attached. But here's a question we need to ask. While Russia may be filling a gap and presenting a new type of partnership to Africa, is it really building stability? Because here's the thing. The countries receiving these weapons are not democratic. Many are military regimes grappling with insurgencies, political unrest, or economic collapse. Introducing more firepower into these fragile environments may strengthen regimes in the short term, but it also risks fueling repression, prolonging conflict, or sparking regional arms races. And what about Africa? For African leaders, this moment presents both opportunity and danger. On one hand, turning to Russia provides leverage, right? It allows governments to diversify their alliances, resist Western pressure, and negotiate from a stronger position, which it desperately needs right now. But on the other hand, it deepens reliance on external powers and brings new forms of foreign influence into domestic affairs. And for ordinary Africans, the stakes are even higher. If Russian arms bolster authoritarian regimes, silence dissent, or escalate violence, it's everyday people who bear the cost. And once foreign boots and military deals are entrenched, they're hard to unwind. So while the global media focuses on great power competition, the real question is, what kind of future is being built on African soil? And who is it really for? Because behind every convoy of tanks, best believe there are choices being made about governance, sovereignty, and the direction this continent is heading. And this, my people, is what we should be concerned with. Now let's flip the lens for a moment, because this isn't just about what Russia is doing in Africa or what the West is losing. It's about what African nations can choose to do with this moment. For the first time in a generation, Africa holds real geopolitical leverage. Russia wants influence. The West wants access. China wants markets. The Gulf states want partnerships. Everyone's coming to the table. But the question is, who is setting the terms? In the Cold War, African countries were often pressured to pick a side. You were either with the West or with the Soviet bloc. And many nations paid a steep price for choosing wrong or for choosing at all. But today, the game has changed. And if played wisely, African leaders can use this global competition to negotiate better terms for infrastructure, for technology, for security, for trade. Now, that doesn't mean selling off loyalty to the highest bidder. It means acting like what Africa is, a rising center of gravity in global affairs. And that means asking the hard questions. Are these partnerships building our future or just prolonging dependency? Are we gaining skills, technology, and control, or just importing solutions that we don't own? Are we aligning with countries who see us as equals or just tools in their rivalry? Because leverage only matters if it's used strategically. Otherwise, today's military aid becomes tomorrow's foreign entanglement. And that's the long game. Not just surviving global power plays, but using them to build African power, African agency, and African capacity. So where do we go from here, my people? Russia is making bold moves in Africa, delivering weapons, expanding military partnerships, and filling the void left by the West. It's strategic, it's calculated, and it's not slowing down. But beyond the headlines and cargo manifests, the deeper story is unfolding. Africa is not just a passive stage for great power competition. It's a region of rising importance politically, economically, and strategically. And the decisions being made today about who we partner with, what we trade, and what kind of power we build will shape the continent for decades to come. This is bigger than Russia. It's bigger than the West. This is about ownership, alignment. It's about vision. Will Africa use this moment to negotiate better deals, build local capacity, and assert its role in the new world order? Or are we just going to repeat old patterns, swapping one foreign partner for another while leaving the people behind? That's the question. So now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Russia's growing military footprint in Africa? Is this a smart play for African security or a dangerous game with long-term risks? And what should African nations be demanding in return? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to read them. And if you found this episode insightful, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. And until next time, take care. Hey, you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.